My name is Buechner. I am a part of the teaching and equipping team here at Connection Church. And it's crazy to think that we are over halfway past our sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount. And I don't know about you, but this series has kind of opened up my eyes a little bit in a way that I probably haven't really heard this portion of the Bible being spoken from stage. And the cool thing about Jesus is he's not just saving people, he's teaching you a whole new way how to see life. And so today I've titled my message, A Different Kind of Focus. So how many of you have taken a close-up picture with your camera on your phone? And when you take that close-up picture, it's all blurry. What's the message that usually pops up on there? You got to pull back. You got to step back, or it's out of focus and you have to refocus, right? Sometimes that little shift of just pulling back the phone allows that camera to, whatever you're picturing, whether it's, I had this happen at work. I have to take pictures for parts that I have at work, and these parts are small, and I have to take close-up pictures for defects. And sometimes just pulling away just a little bit allows that camera to focus on what I'm trying to take a picture of, and everything just is there. And Jesus is doing that with our hearts in Matthew 6. He's not changing the scenery. He's just helping you refocus your lens. So today we're going to walk through Matthew 6, 19 through 34, and just go by section. We're not going to just hear what Jesus said, but we're going to understand what the listeners heard and how it would have hit them and what it means for us today. So my first point is the heart behind formation. And what we're going to talk about is Matthew 6, 19 through 21, and we're going to read it right here. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So it says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy. So in the first century, they would have known this very well because wealth was something that was tangible. It was something that they could physically hold in their hands. It meant clothes, it meant grain, metals, and all those things were something that they considered wealth. So all of a sudden I was like, okay, we're moths. Why would they be worried about moths? Well, moths ate their clothing. They went into the clothing and they started eating away the material. How many of you remember mothballs? A lot of hands. So do I. My grandpa's house. What was that? Yeah. So my grandpa's house, I was texting my dad because I wanted to make sure I had my memory right. And yep, he reaffirmed that. It was everywhere. You go home smelling like it. And he even said they put it in the fridge, in the freezer. Like, you know what mothballs are? They're insecticides. They are chemicals. It's a chemical. And you can still get them. And because I remember my wife and I were walking the dog, and I'm like, man, it smells like mothballs out here. And I'm like, and all of a sudden it brought me to that childhood memory. And I was like, and I all of a sudden just read this verse, and that just kind of popped up. And it was just one of those things where, but what those mothballs are used to is to stop those larvae from forming and eating away material. But back in Jesus' days, he was making a fairly obvious statement. These items, these things that you consider your wealth, can deteriorate. And Jesus was saying everything you physically hold on to eventually goes away. Eventually just disintegrates and disappears. And for the first century Jews, this would have hit deeply. Their economy and sense of worth were tied to visible possessions and social status and stability. And here's the thing. The Roman Empire was taking everything away from them. They were taxing them like crazy. If they could take it away, they would have. And the thing here is Jesus isn't condemning wealth. He's not condemning money. He's not condemning possessions. He's challenging what we truly treasure. He's being straight with them. He's saying this stuff can fade away, it can break, it can be taken away. And then he brings the heart into it. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. In other words, he is saying what you feed your attention becomes your devotion. Let me say it again. What you feed your attention becomes your devotion. Whatever you put your attention to is where your focus stays. You can only look at one thing. So if you're looking at over here, that's what you're looking at. No, I lost my spot. All right. He's saying that desire isn't evil. Money isn't evil. Having a nice car or nice house is not evil. However, it's where you place your energy into that's the most important. The question is whether that energy is aimed at protecting yourself and the material possessions that you have, or is it protecting heaven and the things of God? When your worth becomes what you have, you constantly reinforce what you're lacking. In other words, you only feel good about yourself because of what you own, whether it's the newest phone, the latest trending clothes, or the paycheck. You will always be drained. And why is that? Because there's always going to be something better out there. You get that brand new car, guess what? Next year's model is going to have the newest thing. The newest phone, next year's model is going to have the latest AI technology that's going to be available at the time. You're always going to be looking for what's missing and not focusing on what you have. And gratitude constantly reinforces peace in our life. And what is Jesus doing here? He's rewiring how we think. Treasure isn't about having less, it's about being whole. And we've been talking about this through our sermon series. Heaven's treasure is not up there, it's not in the sky, it's not some faraway place. It's here. The treasure that's unstealable, it's rust-proof. The character that God builds inside of here, that's where our treasure lies. And Jesus is starting this by repositioning the heart, talking about treasure. And then he moves even deeper to how we even see things. And that's the heart behind clarity. In Matthew 6:22-23 says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So then if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? So to the Jews, to have a good eye meant to see generously, to view life as abundant and not scarce. A bad eye meant envy or stinginess or a self-consumed person. In other words, Jesus was saying your posture of your eye reveals the posture of what's inside of you, your soul. And when he spoke those words, the people knew exactly what he was talking about. So where else in the Bible does this talk about having a good eye? Proverbs 22:9. He who is generous, good eye, will be blessed, for he gives some of his food to the poor. What about a bad eye? Proverbs again, 23:6-7. Do not eat the bread of a selfish man, or desire his delicacies, for as he thinks within himself, so is he. He says to you, eat and drink, but his heart is not with you. I know Joey mentioned the Bible Project, and when I was doing my research for this, the Bible Project came up again. It's a great resource if you're reading the Bible and you have some questions about that. The Bible Project is great. They quoted R.T. France, who is a New Testament scholar and an Anglican cleric, and he says this about this passage in Matthew. This rather obscure little saying seems to be using a wordplay in order to commend both single-mindedness, and that is pursuing the values of the kingdom of heaven, and generosity as a key to an effective life of a disciple. What Jesus is saying has little to do with physical eyesight. The eye is the lamp, not because it sees, because it lets light in. If your lens is clouded by jealousy, comparison, or fear, the whole inside of your world goes dark. But when your vision is whole, meaning single, undivided, or generous, your entire being lights up. Think of it this way. The world doesn't shape your perception shapes the world that you live in. Two people can be struggling with the same exact issue. Same thing. But one person sees this as chaos and gloom, and my world is crashing, my world is coming around me, and it's crumbling. But the other one sees it as dependence and co-creation with God. The same situation, but a different way of looking at it. Jesus is calling us to live with a single eye, not with naive optimism, but with undivided focus. And that's on him, a singular sight. To not be focused on suspicion or scarcity or what you're lacking, but seeing the goodness of God. Because once your vision clears, you just don't see better, you start seeing the truth of what's going on around you. And that is the heart behind faithfulness. And in Matthew 24, it says, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate one or love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." What Jesus is saying here is you shouldn't serve two masters. He's saying you can't. So there's two different words. It's not saying you shouldn't serve two masters. He's saying you physically can't serve two of them. The King James Version used the word mammon instead of wealth. And mammon translates to money, wealth, and material possessions. According to gotquestions.org, another great website if you are questioning about certain things of the Bible, it says, in biblical culture, the word mammon often carried a negative connotation. It was sometimes used to describe all the lusts and excesses, gluttony, greed, dishonest, worldly gain. Ultimately, mammon described an idol of materialism. In Jesus' day, it represented the empire mindset, where they sought to seek control to feel safe. They defined themselves by what they owned, and they determined their value based on how they stacked up against others. There was a comparison thing going on. That's what empires, that's what kingdoms do. They want to control, they want to define themselves by what they own, and they constantly compare themselves to other people. That's what governments, empires do. And Jesus draws a line in the concrete, not in the sand, concrete. And he's saying by saying you can't serve two masters. You can't focus on both. The one that populates your imagination the most wins. That's why what you put your attention to is where you put your focus on. What you're focusing on, you can only focus on one thing. You can't focus on two things at one time. Paul says in 1 Timothy 6 through 10, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we can't take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall in temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all evil, all sorts of evil. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. And some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. What is this verse about? It's about trust versus control. Serving mammon isn't really greed, it's fear. It's to manage what we can't predict, protecting what feels like it's going to collapse from under us. When we feel like our world is going to fall, what do? We cling on to things harder. We cling on to our lives harder. The need to manage can become an idol of worship in itself. Jesus is not speaking against money or success. Remember, Paul says the root of money is evil. He doesn't say money is evil. The love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. He's trying to make you see that the smoke screen that your worth can be secured by something. He's trying to make you see that the smoke screen can be removed. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to read my own sentence here. He is trying to make you see the smoke screen that your worth can be secured by something that can be taken away. It's on our currency even today. In God we trust, right? But the minute our bank account goes red, or the business deal falls through, or the bills pile up, that phrase kind of just disappears. Why? Because underneath the surface, anxiety builds up. It's an attempt to control what trust can only heal. When we hold on to the outcomes, when we hold on to that control, we end up serving mammon. And it whispers, if you could just fix this, if you could just fix this, I think you'll finally be okay. If you fix it, you'll be okay. Just this one time, you fix it, and you'll be fine. But that's never the case, is it? Control doesn't create peace. It actually kills it. The tighter you hold on to something, the more life slips away from you. And that's why Jesus moves on to presence. If control is about holding on to something tight, presence is about letting go. He's not just saying, stop worrying. He's saying, look up. And that's the heart behind presence. In Matthew 6:25-32, it says, for this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and more than the body than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow, nor reap, nor gather in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth more than they? And who of you, by being worried, can add a single hour to his life? And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you, not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. And if God so clothes the grass of the fields, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you? You of little faith. Do not worry then, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, for your heavenly Father knows you need all these things. And some churches would just say, stop worrying and be done. But that's not what Jesus was getting at. See, Jesus is speaking to a people who knew worry. You got to remember, the people that he was talking to, they didn't have college degrees. They didn't have retirement plans. They didn't have stocks. They were day laborers. They were heavily taxed by the Roman Empire, and they lived day to day. He said, for this reason I say to you, don't be worried about your life. He is making a connection here. He is saying, because you are of value, because there is a Father who knows you, stop living as if your worth is determined by the food on your table or the money in your bank account. He talks about the birds, how they don't sow, they don't reap, they don't have storage facilities, yet God feeds them. He talks about the lilies. They grow and do not toil, yet they are greater than Solomon and more beautiful than Solomon. He's not saying don't work. He's not saying go and be lazy and God is just going to take care of you. He's saying stop letting worry run the show. Worry is just thinking about tomorrow and forgetting that God has already taken care of it. Anxiety is ruminating about the what ifs in life instead of you are enough with God. So I just want to stay in this a little bit because I really, really feel that we're going to put this together, but I just want to stay in this a little bit and kind of backtrack and bring us back to where we are now. Jesus is inviting us to shift our focus. He asks, where is your treasure? In verse 19, because where your treasure is, your heart will be also. If your treasure is in Friday's paycheck, your heart will be anchored in time. It will be constrained by time. And time is an illusion. The past is memories of what we saw through that lens. The future doesn't exist. All we have is right now. In this moment right now is what we have. If your treasure is in God, your heart rests in something bigger than yourself. And then he continues to fine-tune that focus in verse 22 through 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your body will be full of darkness. He's talking about your inner vision. Do you look out of fear or worry or anxiety? Or do you see out of trust? Do you see prayer and pray out of your lack, or do you see provision? And then he says it pretty bluntly, no one can serve two masters in verse 24. That mammon is the opposition that promises security, control, and protecting your image. That's what mammon is. And this echoes what psychology tells us when your belonging shrinks, meaning that means that when you've lost your felt sense of connection and contribution, you start turning inward. And that's when you start comparing. That person's doing it better. That church is doing it better. That job looks better. That protects yourself instead of relating to other people and giving freely out of your heart. We grab for anything else that makes us feel like we belong to something or belong to someone. We chase after earthly treasures to cover our inferiority, to make us feel like we are something, like we belong. But Jesus is saying, you don't have to go there. He's like, let's redirect your focus. Let's retrain how you think. And then, after all that, in Matthew 6, 33 through 34, he invites you into alignment. It says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Jesus isn't denying that life gets hard, because he's saying there will be trouble. There will be stuff that happens. But hear what he's offering in these. He's offering presence. He's saying, keep your eyes on the Father who knows you, who values you, who provides for you. This doesn't mean that you're going to have no pain and no problems. It means that you're choosing alignment and trust instead of fear. When he says, seek first the kingdom, he's not talking about chasing people who agree with you or the next influence pastor on TikTok or the newest gossip in the office. He's saying, seek the kingdom first. When your attention, your values, and your trust are aligned with God, everything just kind of just falls in its rightful place, where it should. This allows you to start living even when life isn't easy. Now I want to pause here, because I know for some of you, when you hear don't worry or don't be anxious, maybe it triggers something. There might be a little sting there. And I want to put something out here. I'm not talking if you live with a real chronic anxiety that has been medically diagnosed, or clinical depression, or you had some life-altering trauma. I get it. We get it. The leadership of this church gets it. Jesus gets it. And we're not shaming you for that at all. And here's the thing. Jesus isn't saying, just get over it. Just stop worrying. Just stop. It's easier to say it that way, right? We could be a church that says, just stop doing this, and you'll be fine. But there's more. There's meat to this. What he's doing is he's inviting you to notice it, to start paying attention to where your mind runs. When those anxious or those worry thoughts start infiltrating your mind, when you can't sleep at night. But what you can do is you can start to learn to see it, to name it, and slowly readjust your focus, because it is a process. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow unlearning, a retraining of where we let our attention go. Every time you notice that your spiral of worry is starting, you have a choice. You can pause, you can breathe, and you can remember that God already holds that space for you. Or you can keep spiraling and let that thought fester and grow into something else. So maybe this week, the first step is to pause and notice. When your mind starts to race with the what ifs, when your worry starts to spiral, redirect your focus. Look for God's presence in the small things. Maybe it's the colors of the trees. It's peak fall season right now. Those tree colors are amazing. In the next week or two, there'll be no more leaves left. Maybe it's the laughter in your home. Maybe it's a sunrise or a sunset on your way to work, on your way back home from work. Shift your focus from the problem to his presence, because you can't serve peace and panic. You can't serve those two masters. And science even backs this up. Redirecting your attention literally rewires your brain. That's why it's helpful to pause before you speak in anger. If you're really mad and angry, the worst thing you can do is respond in that feeling. It's best to just pause, walk away, and respond when everything is calm, right? That's why they say don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry, because you just buy more food. And even when you're in the office like I am, and your eyes start bugging out from staring at this screen for 2 hours straight, to get up and go look out the window and focus on something in the distance for a couple minutes. Something shifts mentally when you redirect your focus and don't live in the feeling that you're currently in. It's the same thing with anxiety and worry. It's a practice. So practice renewal. Every time you refocus on God, the what if loop gets weaker and the what is loop grows stronger. Jesus wasn't offering a quick fix. He wasn't saying that all your problems are just going to magically disappear. He was bringing down heaven to earth, teaching us that if we see through God's eyes again, to take their focus off fear, off control, back into God's heart. When that happens, your treasure becomes eternal and our sight becomes clear. Our loyalties become undivided. And that anxiety loop gets overtaken by peace. He's inviting you into a different kind of focus, one where fear no longer drives the vehicle of your mind. So I'm going to end today's service a little bit differently than I normally do. Before we leave today and rush back into everything that's going on today, I want us to pause, redirect, and practice. So, if you want to help me with a little exercise, if you so choose, close your eyes for a moment. I want you to take a big, deep breath in through your nostrils and just slowly breathe it back out. And just let your shoulders just relax and drop just for a minute. Now, I want you to picture your hands open in front of you with your eyes closed. And in your hands is something heavy that you've been carrying this week. Maybe it's a money situation. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a conversation you had this week that just made you feel defeated and angry and upset at somebody. Maybe there's hate for somebody or something in your life. Or maybe there's anxiety about the future. I want you to notice something while you're listening and you visualize that in your hands. I just want you to pause and notice what it has done to your stress levels this week. The headaches, how your mind ruminates, the story it's been telling you. Now pause. Remember, you can't serve that and peace. Now I want you to shift your focus. Think of something good and simple. Maybe it was something you noticed on the drive into church today, the changing of the leaves. Maybe you had the window down, you let that crisp breeze flow through your vehicle. Maybe it was a conversation you had with somebody here this morning, a hug, a smile, a fist bump, or a handshake. Maybe it was the worship music this morning. Maybe it was something that you received a thank you this morning. Notice God's goodness in that. The more you notice his goodness and his presence, the smaller that problem kind of feels. You can open your eyes now. So this week, every time your mind drifts into the what ifs, I want you to start redirecting it to the what is and start looking at the simple things of life. Breathe, remember, look for the signs of his care. Even as the smallest redirection weakens that worry loop and strengthens you to face today's trouble. Joy mentioned it last week at the Lord's Prayer. Give us today our daily bread. God, give me today what I need. Because he says, today has enough trouble of its own. So Lord, give me what I can have, or what I need for today. Clothe me with what I need today, the provisions that you have for me. Let us pray. God, we let go what we've been trying to hold on our own. The stuff that's too heavy, too much, that constant battering, we hand it back to you. Help us lift our eyes again. Remind us that your kingdom isn't far away. It's right here in all the noise. Teach us to see through our good eye and not a divided one of control or worry. Show us how to trust you in the small things, to find peace in the middle of our chaos, of the noise. Remind us of the good little simple things that you have provided us with a heart of gratitude, and to notice the treasures that life can't take away. In your name I pray. Amen.